Omagyantimirandasya Jananjanashalakaya Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swamrupapadamayyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutaha Padamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatha Vitamtam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadvitam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Deva Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Shantam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanam Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindhu Devacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasa Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Ram Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna. I'd like to welcome all of you all to our Gita classes. We are on the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita, which is entitled as Karma Yoga. And the last few times we have been speaking about the concept of Atmarati. We discussed the various qualities of an Atmarati. And then we last time spoke about the ways in which the Atmarati strengthens his connection with Krishna. And then today we're going to be speaking something very, very interesting and important to understand about an Atmarati. So just to remind you all the context of our discussion, we have been speaking about the yoga ladder. We spoke about the various steps in the yoga ladder. And we spoke about the topmost step of the yoga ladder, which is the process of devotion, which is where the concept of Atmarati is introduced. So that means somebody who is on the top of the yoga ladder is a self-satisfied soul, who is very much in the higher consciousness of spiritual life. So an Atmarati is someone who is at the highest rung of the yoga ladder. And such a person doesn't have to function as normal people in the material world function. Because an Atmarati is, first of all, satisfied in the self. And the second thing that the Atmarati concept introduces us to is a very interesting concept, which is about inaction. Why does an Atmarati does not have to do anything in this world? So I'll explain the whole concept of Atmarati using some very interesting ways of looking at it. Every human being who is born in this world is born with some debts. The first debt that all of us have in this world is known as Devarina. So what is the meaning of Devarina? Devarina means our debt to the demigods. Our debt to Ganpati, our debt to Lord Shiva, our debt to Durga Devi, our debt to Mitra, Indra, Varuna, Chandra. We are all obliged to so many personalities. And we have to pay those debts. Even to clear your stomach, you need one demigod to help you. So imagine how grateful you have to be to the demigods. Simple things in our life we can't do if somebody is not helping us do it, basically. So we get bad health And there's one demigod responsible for it, which is Surya Dev. Surya is directly connected with your health. If you get little less sunlight, your health goes down. So Surya gives us sunlight. So with that, a lot of our health factors are involved. There are demigods who help us blink our eyes. Every aspect of our life is provided by the gods. And therefore, there's a Rina, which is known as Deva Rina. Rina means debts. The second type of debt that all of us have is known as Rishi Rina. Rishi Rina means our debt to the sages, like Vyasa, Gautama, Bharadwaj Muni, Valmiki. So many of these sages have left behind so much knowledge, wisdom that we all use in our lives. And we all can go ahead in our life using this wisdom and knowledge. We are all indebted to them. The third Rina is known as Apta Rina. Deva Rina, Rishi Rina, and Apta Rina. Apta Rina means this is debt to our family members. Our mother, our father, grandfather, all people in our family have done so much for us. The first indebtedness to them is that they allowed us to live. They didn't kill us in the womb. Imagine, nowadays there are so many parents who kill the child in the womb itself. The very fact that the parents allowed us to come out and experience life, you're supposed to be grateful to them. That's actually a Rina. There's a debt that we have on us. So the first indebtedness is that they allowed us to live. And then parents give us food. They give us love. They send us to school. They grew us up. They taught us values. This is called as Apta Rina. This is the third type of debt that we all have. Then there is something known as Pitra Rina. So this is this is indebtedness to our forefathers. So Apta Rina is the immediate family that is connected to us, and Pitra Rina is the entire ancestry, our forefathers. They created a legacy for what we are today. So whatever we are today is based on a legacy created by our forefathers. They have left so much social customs that we all follow. It's not just about heritage of money, basically. It's an entire series of social customs which are even today helpful in our spiritual practices. Typically, all of us, one of the places that we actually experience social customs the most is during festivals and in the temple altar in our homes. Each and every one of us, we have some connection to spirituality based on certain values and systems that our forefathers have installed in our family. This is known as Pitra Rina. Then there is something known as Bhuta Rina. So there is Deva Rina, Rishi Rina, Apta Rina, Pitra Rina, and fifth is Bhuta Rina. Bhuta is not ghost. Bhuta means living beings. So there are so many living beings around us that have nourished us. The cow has given us milk. Every day we drink milk, nourishment, thanks to mother cow. We are indebted to the birds around us. Early in the morning, the bird starts chirping, and the sound is so pleasing. It makes the mind so peaceful. The moment you hear the birds chirping in the morning. So we are grateful to even them, right? Some way or the other. If you take a morning walk and you have trees around your house, you will find these beautiful cuckoos making such melodious sounds. I mean, they're all part of the ecosystem, and we are grateful to them in some way or the other. Then there is something known as Nrina Rina. Nrin, it comes to the word Nara. Nara means human society, basically. So Nrina Rina means our obligation to human society. We use so many facilities of the society, such as education facilities, commuting facilities. So human society as such, we are also indebted to. So that is the last type of obligation. So we all have 6 obligations to fulfill, each and every one of us. We have debt to the gods, debt to the sages, debt to living entities, debt to our parents, debt to our forefathers, debt to human society. And these 6 obligations, we can't escape even one of them. We are all accountable and obligated to all of these 6. So now, in the scriptures, there are ways and methods by which one can fulfill one's obligations. You pay back to, what we do is known as Pancha Shunya Yajna. There are kind of rituals and activities that one does to relieve himself of all these debts. Like, for example, there are some prescriptions of making some school, digging some wells, making some roads to fulfill Nirina Rina. We have taken from society, we give back to society. We're supposed to offer pujas to the gods to offer to fulfill what is known as Devarana. But here is where the interesting thing comes. And a person who is self-satisfied, who is an Atmarati, and who is connected to Krishna, is freed from all these rinas at once. As soon as one connects with Krishna, the Srimad Bhagavatam says, you are no longer indebted to any of these rinas. You are no longer indebted to anybody. All the above mentioned rinas are fulfilled immediately. Therefore, if all these rinas are fulfilled, are gone, such a person need not do any actions in this world. So the first reason a self-satisfied person does not act is because he's satisfied inside. He's self-satisfied, right? So he doesn't need to act. The second reason he does not, an Atmarati does not act is because he is no longer obliged to fulfill any of these debts because he is connected to Krishna directly. A lot of people ask me, when someone dies in the family, do we have to observe Sutak? Do we have to observe these rituals, 13-day, 40-day, whatever rituals? Sutak is specifically a period of examination. When a person dies in the family, there is a particular period till which you can't go to the temple. People ask me, when one becomes a devotee, should they do these rituals that are needed? So here is Krishna's answer to these questions. Verse 18 of the 3rd chapter. Krishna saying, Naiva tasya krite narto na krite neha kaschana na chasya sarva bhuteshu kaschid artha vyapashraya. He says, a self-realized person has no purpose to fulfill in the discharge of his prescribed duties, nor has he any reason to perform such work, nor has he any need to depend on other living beings. Verse number 19, Krishna says, Tasmad asakta sattam karyam karma samachara asakto hi acharan karma param apnoti purushas. He says, therefore, without being attached to the fruit of activities, one should act as a matter of duty. For by working without attachment, one attains the supreme. This is the third reason why Atmarati does not act in this world. An Atmarati does not act in this world because he is absorbed in something higher. The first reason Atmarati doesn't act in this world is because he is self-satisfied. He's satisfied with him, so he doesn't have to act outside. The second reason Atmarati doesn't have to act is because an Atmarati is no longer obliged to anyone or anything because he is connected to Krishna. And the third reason an Atmarati does not need to do anything in this world is because of his absorption in something higher. What do you mean by his absorption in something higher? It simply means he's acting on another plane. Because he's acting on another plane, he does not have to act on this plane on which all of us are. A person who is very exalted and is very elevated is not inactive. He's just inactive in the plane of this world. He is very active on a spiritual plane. Today morning, I was in Jaipur and I went to have darshan of Radha Govindji. I went for Mangalarti and fascinating, 4:30 in the morning, 5,000 people waiting for darshan. 4:30 in the morning, imagine. At 4:30, who is active? Hardly anyone is active. Most people are in unconscious state at 4:30 in the morning. That is the time you get the deepest sleep. And at 4:30, 5,000 people are so active. Now, if you look at those 5,000 people in the daytime, they might seem to be very inactive people. They're doing nothing. Sometimes somebody is apparently not doing something much, in life. But you look at them at 4:30 in the morning, they are very active. So at one plane they're inactive, but on another plane they're very active. So it's not that an Atmarati does not do anything. He doesn't do anything in this plane, but he's doing something on another plane only. If you look at a bank account of an Atmarati, probably the bank account might be pathetic, bank balance. So you might say, what kind of a person is this? He doesn't have any bank balance only, highly inactive guy. But look at that person on another plane, on a spiritual realm, he's very highly active. He's absorbed in something much different. That is what an Atmarati is. I think I told you all the story of this Brahman who was cooking sweet rice in his mind, and he was doing all the offering in his mind only. He was cooking sweet rice, he was boiling the milk, he was purchasing the rice and milk and everything. And he offered also, don't offer to the Lord, he just wanted to check if it is hot enough or if it is cool enough to offer. He put his hand in the sweet rice, and in actuality, his hand got burnt. He was doing all this at a mental level, basically. So, there's another story of an amazing devotee named Raghunath Das Goswami. He's one of the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. And the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan are literally the founders of Vrindavan. What you see today in Vrindavan is literally founded by these 6 personalities. Of the 6, one of them is known as Raghunath Das Goswami. And Raghunath Das Goswami is such an austere person. Someday I'll tell you all the entire story of Raghunath Das Goswami. But the reason I'm telling you right now is just to give this one thing. He was such an austere person, Raghunath Das Goswami, that once in 3 days, he would eat, the only thing that he would consume once in 3 days was 2 drops of buttermilk. Now, when you and me hear a story like this, we are fascinated because we probably will drink 2 liters of buttermilk every 2 hours. That is the kind of capacity of eating that we have. And here is a person, once in 3 days, 2 drops of buttermilk, that too measured. And suddenly one day, he had loose motions. So everyone in Jagannath Puri was amazed. How can somebody who drinks 2 drops of buttermilk every 3 days have loose motion? Is it logically possible that such a person has loose motion? So people were amazed. How can you overeat? Loose motion happens when you overeat, right? You eat too much. That's when people realized that Raghunath Das Goswami, in his mind, he was attending some very, very exalted pastime of Krishna in his mind. And in that pastime, he ate sweet rice. And that sweet rice, what he ate in his mind, led him to have, dysentery in real. Now, for you and me, we can't relate to this kind of a level of, absorption. That is the level at which Atmaratis are. Another devotee, another Goswami, his name is Rupa Goswami. So Rupa Goswami is one of the leaders among the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan. He's literally the Acharya of the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. In fact, all of us, those who are very strongly connected to ISKCON and strongly connected to this Sampradaya, we are called Rupanugas. Rupanugas means we are followers in the footsteps of Rupa Goswami. So a lot of what I've been sharing with you all and teaching you all about devotion is taught to us by Rupa Goswami. So Rupa Goswami was one time sitting under a tree and his eyes were closed. And there was a lame man passing by. He was not able to walk properly, basically. And Rupa Goswami's eyes were closed. He was not even looking at who was passing by. He was absorbed in something different. And this lame man was limping. And suddenly, with his eyes closed, Rupa Goswami started laughing loudly. And this lame man thought that Rupa Goswami was laughing at his condition. And this person, he felt very offended. It happens, right? Somebody is walking very oddly and there are people making fun and all, So this person got offended that, Rupa Goswami is making fun of him. And the moment that happened, Rupa Goswami lost his meditation. He just lost his focus, basically. In his meditation, what Rupa Goswami was seeing was something very interesting. Rupa Goswami saw a vision in his mind where Radha and Krishna were in a forest. And Radharani was plucking flowers. And as she was plucking flowers, there was one particular branch that was a little on the higher side. And Radha was not able to reach to the flowers of that branch. And Krishna, he was very smart. He stood on that branch, but he was in a hiding situation. Radha couldn't see him. He was on top of the branch. And Krishna pressed his feet and the branch bent down slightly, and the flowers came down. So Radha was fascinated. The flowers are bending on its own, and Radha caught that branch to pluck those flowers. As soon as Radha caught that branch, Krishna left the branch and Radha flew into the air, So Rupa Goswami was seeing this scene and he started laughing like anything, seeing the fun, that Radha and Krishna were having. And this devotee who was passing by, he assumed that Rupa Goswami was laughing at him. Of course, it teaches us a very simple lesson. Misunderstandings happen. People take offense. If it can happen with Rupa Goswami, who is such an exalted person, who are we? A great soul, Rupa Goswami is Rupa Manjari in the spiritual world. He is the most intimate associate of Radha and Krishna in the spiritual world. And when he comes as Rupa Goswami, he gets misunderstood. So who are we compared to Rupa Goswami? We are nothing, right? And if somebody does something that we get offended, or when we do something, somebody gets offended, don't be surprised. Misunderstandings are a part of this world. They will happen. Srila Prabhupada once said, they misunderstood Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna himself. What to speak of you and me? And I remember many years back, I was attending a scholars conference. All great scholars, all PhD guys, studying very, very in-depth philosophy of different aspects. And one scholar, I was shocked when I heard him say that. The scholar, he has studied Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Very, very intense study of Jiva Goswami Sandarbhas and Gaudiya Vaishnava Parampara. PhD on Jiva Goswami Sandarbhas, yes. And this man, he wrote some book on Lord Chaitanya. And you know what he writes in that book? It's amazing. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he is incarnation of Krishna himself, who appeared 500 years back in Navadvip. And this man, so Lord Chaitanya would get what is known as Ashtavikar. These are symptoms of ecstasy in the body. He would have tears in his eyes, his limbs would tremble, his hair would stand on end, he would have ecstatic symptoms. These are like very exalted divine symptoms. This man, his interpretation of this is that Lord Chaitanya, he had epilepsy. He suffered from epilepsy. That is this guy's interpretation of that, of the ecstatic symptoms, basically. Now imagine. So unfortunately, people are not able to see the higher level of absorption. So the point is that if people can misunderstand Lord Chaitanya, who are you and me? People can misunderstand us for sure, Now, coming back to the story, this lame man was very hurt. He was so hurt that he left from there. And Rupa Goswami suddenly woke up. He lost his vision. He lost his absorption. And he started questioning himself, why did I lose my absorption? Now, he was inactive on the external plane, right? But he was very active on an internal plane. But now, he lost that activity in his internal plane. He just lost his absorption in internal plane. And then he realized something must have gone wrong. Something I must have done wrong unknowingly, because of which I lost my absorption. Now, one of the very important lessons that we can learn over here is that when we are practicing our spiritual lives, be very careful of not offending devotees, intentionally or unintentionally. Because when someone takes offense, all our spiritual practices and all our spiritual strength go down the drain. Rupa Goswami is wondering what happened to me. He was bewildered. He went to his elder brother Sanatan Goswami, who was another exalted of the six Goswamis. So Sanatan Goswami, when he was asked why my meditation broke, Sanatan Goswami immediately told him, you must have offended someone. So Rupa Goswami said, I was sitting here with my eyes closed and I didn't move anywhere today. What is the chance of me offending anybody? See, the interesting thing is, even if you don't do something, someone will get offended by you. That's the nature of this world. Even if you don't do something, somebody is angry at you. Even if you don't do something, someone is upset about you. And the worst thing is, for all you know, you have no idea what you have done only to upset that person. Nature of this world is very strange, basically. So Sanatana Goswami, he told them, see, what you have done, we don't know. But for sure, if you have lost your absorption, you have offended somebody. Sanatana Goswami said, I'll give you a very good idea of what we can do to find out whom you have offended, knowingly and unknowingly. So Sanatana Goswami said that let's organize a feast for everyone in Vrindavan to come. And the person who does not turn up for the feast, that is the person you have offended surely. And if you call devotees for a feast, they won't say no. Devotees are very enthusiastic to eat Krishna Prasad, So they organized a massive feast and everyone in Vrindavan was called. And one old Baba, he didn't come. And Rupa Goswami immediately realized I have offended him. And Rupa Goswami went to that Baba, and he fell at his feet and started begging forgiveness. And he told him, I was not at all my intention to offend you in any way. And I told him I was absorbed in something else. And then that Baba forgave him. And as soon as the Baba forgave him, his absorption started going back again, basically. So when we study these great souls, some of us are going to Vrindavan this December. When you actually go to Vrindavan, you will see many sadhus over there. And some of these sadhus, they seem to be like strange people. They behave strangely and they do strange things and they don't seem to be doing anything much in their life. Don't be mistaken. Don't be mistaken that they are not doing anything in life. They're doing something on a higher level. They're doing something on a spiritual, mental, and absorption level in their personal lives. They are at another level. So they don't need to act on the material level. So these are three reasons why an Atmarati does not act. First, he's satisfied. Second, he has no obligation because he's connected to Krishna. All runas are taken care of. And third, there is absorption. Activity is going on another plane. So, of course, when we go to Vrindavan, there may be somebody who are pretenders also. They're feigning absorption. They're feigning to be so advanced just to gain some popularity, some donation, some money, some fame, some followers, some property, etc. That's possible. But real exalted people are absorbed at another level. And interestingly, though they are absorbed at a higher level, still these exalted people act. Like Rupa Sanatana Goswami, I was telling you how such high level of absorption they had, but still they did action in this world. So why does a person who is so spiritually evolved needs to act in this world? Ideally, they don't need to act, but they still act. Why they act? That Krishna is going to answer in his next section that we're going to just take up now. So far, we have been seeing the section of the yoga ladder. And now, Krishna is going to teach us a very, very important part of this chapter, which is known as an example. In fact, this is the only place in the entire Gita where Krishna is giving an example. And so this is the answer to the question. Why does a great exalted soul, though they don't have to do anything, they are not obliged to do anything, still they do a lot in this world? You might think, there are so many sadhus who have become charitable trusts, who are doing so much for society. We're doing food for life. We are helping poor people. We are doing so many things from a charitable point of view. So somebody might think that why does somebody who is so spiritually elevated still have to do things in this world? A simple answer Krishna gives. So this beautiful verse number 21. And this is one of the very brilliant and a very, very foundational verses of the Bhagavad Gita. The Krishna says, Yad yad acharati shreshtas tat tat evataro janaha sayat pramanam kurute lokastat anuvartate. Krishna says, whatever action a great man performs, common men follow. And whatever standards he sets by his exemplary acts, all the world pursues. So Krishna uses the word here, Shreshta. Yadyat acharati Shreshta. Shreshta means leaders in society. And the word Yadyat acharati means the way leaders behave. Achar and prachar. Achar means actions and prachar means words. So before you do prachar, you have to have achar. So Krishna is saying, Yadyat acharati shreshta, the way leaders behave, tat tat evataro janaha. Public in general follow their example. Sayat pramanam kurute. Whatever example they set, leaders set, that is what a common man follows. Now, when Krishna is speaking about leaders, the question that might be in your mind is, I'm not a leader. Actually, each and every one of us are leaders in our own ways. Not in terms of some political party or anything like that. We are leaders in the sense that we have influence over someone at least. A mother, a father will have influence over a child at least. So we are going to influence people around us for sure, in some way or the other. And anybody who has influence over even one person is a leader. There's a saying in English that says, actions speak louder than words. Therefore, an Atmarati acts. Why does an Atmarati act? Because he wants to set an example for others, for the world. He does not need to act, but he still acts. Many times in a family, someone may not want to perform a certain kind of work, but they still do it just to set an example, because often what the elders do, children observe very closely, and they scrutinizingly observe you. So sometimes you may not want to do something, but you still have to do it. Why? Because somebody is observing you at home. You might not want to get up early morning. You might think that I want to just laze till 11 o'clock in the morning today. But you still get up. Why you get up? Because there's a child that is in your house that is observing you. What will the child learn from you? If you laze around till 11 o'clock, the child will laze around till 2 o'clock. Thinking that, my parents, my parents are my examples. If I have bad example, I will also learn that only, isn't it? So people in society scrutinize our behavior. The day we start going to the temple and we start acting in a particular way, people scrutinize. They say this person, he's going to the temple. And therefore, his actions are very much exemplary, right? And they compare your words with your actions. And especially the moment you start thinking that you are a devotee, people become even more observant. People become even more observant of you as a person. If you declare yourself as a devotee in your office, if you declare yourself as a devotee in your, society, if you declare yourself as a devotee anywhere in your family circle, you immediately all cameras on. They will start observing whether this fellow is actually acting like a devotee. You may say, I'm a devotee, but are you actually a devotee? They will start wanting to know. And if they find your actions exemplary, they will say, wow, I also want to become like this person. Now, you may not be able to give a lecture, but by your behavior, you're actually giving a lot of lectures. So some of you all might think that I also want to inspire somebody to take up Krishna consciousness. I also want other people to get inspired by the message of the Gita. How do I do it? I don't know how to speak. I don't know how to give lectures and all. You don't need to give. Just by observing your actions, people can get inspired. Saint Francis of Assisi would say, tell his preachers, preach all day, and if needed, speak. And how do you preach all day without speaking? By your actions. So that's the whole idea, Just by the way you behave, people can get inspired to become devotees. They'll think that this is what a devotee is. I want to become like this. It's all about your behavior. It's all about the way you behave in public, the way you behave in society, basically. So, example of being a success story. If a person sees your patience, hard work, steadfastness, the person will get inspired. Success is not just gaining success, apparent failure is also success. People gauge your success by your determination in dealing with your failures. So when people see that there are devotees who are exalted and they are ready to do anything to be great examples, then they become really inspired. And that's what the whole idea of being a great example is. There was one disciple of Srila Prabhupada. His name was Guru Das, American initiated disciple of Srila Prabhupada. In the 60s, he was one of the first disciples of Prabhupada. And Prabhupada gave him the responsibility of making life members in Juhu. This is in the early 70s, basically. So he had an appointment with one person named Mr. Parle. He was a big industrialist at that point. So Gurudas Prabhu went to meet him. And, so he went to meet him with his briefcase, all the books, life membership forms, etc. And he was called for an appointment sharp at 11. And he reached exactly on time. And for 25 minutes, he was not called in. And he was called in at 11:25. And Gurudas Prabhu walked in at 11:25. As soon as he walked in, Mr. Parle, in a very bad tone, began to shout at him. He began to shout at him for being late. Now, this blaming, imagine this person had come on time. And 25 minutes late, he was called in. And that person blames him only for coming late by 25 minutes. Now, Gurudas Prabhu, he got wild. I don't know how many of you have seen Gurudas Prabhu. You Google him, Gurudas, huge, giant-like person he is. American, hefty, 6 feet tall guy, and he's being blamed like that, shouted at and abused basically for no fault of his. Gurudas Prabhu, he got so angry, banged the desk door, he banged it. And he told him, I'm not late. Mr. Parle flipped the whole thing. He started laughing at him. He said, you're a disciple of Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada and you still behave like this. You're getting angry. He asked him like that. And Gurudas Prabhu said, because I'm a disciple of Bhaktivedanta Swami, I only banged the table. If I was not the disciple of Bhaktivedanta Swami, I would have done something to you. And that man got little taken back. The point is that usually people like us who are not connected to spirituality in the beginning, the way we react to situations is very different. But the moment you get connected to the teachings of Prabhupada, you get connected to the teachings of the Gita, you understand spiritual practices, you're expected to behave differently because spirituality is supposed to transform your heart. If your heart is not getting transformed, what does it mean? It simply means you're not practicing it properly. That's what it means. If you practice spirituality properly, it has to lead to a transformation of the heart. People in our family have seen us before, and they see us now. If you have not changed, how many other times you call somebody for a program, they will say, I'm not coming. You will say that you have been going for so many years, nothing has happened to you. Why should I go? But if they see you change so much in a very powerful and positive way, they'll say, I want to go. The best preaching is a good example. If you, as an example, can become such a powerful medium of inspiring people to take up spiritual practices, you don't need to open your mouth. Just by your actions, you can preach. His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj would say that the best preaching is a happy, satisfied devotee. We do not preach by our words. Any devotee in Krishna consciousness, whether you're a Grahastha or a Brahmachari or whatever, if he is happy, happiness is contagious to other people. And that will inspire others to join the movement. And therefore, an example is much better than anything else. Krishna in the Gita is talking about the importance of examples. Krishna is talking about the importance of how it is so pertinent, so important that we all lead by examples. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna gives one example, and this is, as I said, the only example Krishna gives in the entire Gita. He gives the example of Janak Maharaj, the father of Sita Devi. The only person quoted by Lord Krishna as an example of a personality in the Gita is the father-in-law of Ram and the father of Sita Devi. And he is also called a self-realized perfect soul. So Janak Maharaj acted as a king very responsibly, sat on the throne, did his administration, he did everything. Why? Simply to give an example to the world. He didn't do it because he was attached to the throne, he was attached to the wealth. He didn't do it because he was attached to power and things like that. He did it in the spirit of setting an example for the world to follow. Krishna, in the 20th verse of this chapter, he says, Karmaneva hi samsiddhi ashita janakadaya loka sangraham evapi sampasyam tarum arhasi. He says, kings such as Janak attained perfection solely by performing prescribed duties. Therefore, just for the sake of educating the people in general, you should perform your work. Loka sangraham evapi. What is the meaning of loka sangraha? The word loka sangraha is a very important word for the Bhagavad Gita. Loka sangraha essentially means you do things for the purpose of educating the people in general. Once there were some scholars that were implying that though Janak Maharaj is called a self-realized person, why does he need to do administration of the kingdom? To prove this point, Janak Maharaj called for a big feast of all the scholars of the kingdom. And these scholars were served the best quality prasad, very high level, high quality food. And interestingly, just before they were going to start eating the food, they were told, look up. They all looked up. There was a sword hanging just above their head, like hanging on a thin thread. And then they were told, eat now. So imagine, if there's a sword hanging right on your head and you're told to eat, what is the inspiration for you to eat? And these people were so petrified that the sword will fall at any time. So they ate very, very fast. They were just totally unaware of what they ate only. So then Janak Maharaj asked them after the whole feast was over, he asked them, how was the feast? They replied, they didn't even know what they ate. How will you keep track, what you ate and what? I mean, for somebody who's absorbing something higher, you don't keep account of what you ate and what you didn't eat, right? So here, these guys, they ate so much, Janak is asking them, what do you ate? They said, we don't remember. We were so afraid, basically, of the sword on top. Janak Maharaj replied to them, as they were eating, their consciousness was on death. But while Janak manages his kingdom, his consciousness is on God. And therefore, his activity was administration on an external level, but his consciousness was on something higher. So Janak is quoted by Krishna as a karma yogi who acted in this world, not because he had to act, but because he gave an example for somebody who's practicing spirituality. You don't have to give up anything. Be in the world, but have your mind fixed on Krishna. That means you do all actions of this world, but your mind should be fixed on something higher. And that is an example of what a great karma yogi like Janak Maharaj would do in this world. There was another king whose name was Purushottam Dev. So he was a king of Orissa, very staunch devotee of Lord Jagannath. So once Purushottam Dev went to Kanchipuram, South India. Kanchipuram is very famous for the temple of Varadaraj. And there is also a very famous temple of Lord Ganesh in Kanchipuram. So when Purushottam Dev, this king, went to Kanchipuram, he met Padmavati, the daughter of the king of Kanchi there. And both of them liked each other. And the king Purushottam Dev went to the king of Kanchi to propose a marriage to his daughter. The king had no objection, and the daughter was promised in marriage. King Purushottam came back to Orissa. At the same time, the king of Kanchi sent his people to verify the authenticity of King Purushottam. Those days, they didn't have Facebook accounts and Instagram accounts to verify authenticity, blue tick, whether it's there or not. They sent actually physical fellow to Orissa to verify. So the minister was invited to stay back in Jagannath Puri for a few days. And on the day of Jagannath Rath Yatra, I'm sure all of you are aware of Jagannath Rath Yatra, right? On the day of Jagannath Rath Yatra, this minister reached there one day before. So the king told him, stay back for Jagannath Rath Yatra. The minister stayed back for Jagannath Rath Yatra. On the day of the Rath Yatra, Purushottam Dev was grooming the street. The tradition of Rath Yatra is that the king of the land becomes a sweeper, sweeps the cart in front of Jagannath. That is a tradition. This minister didn't know about this tradition. He went back and gave a report that he is not a king, he is a sweeper. How misinterpretation happens, how things can be wrongly interpreted. So the king of Kanchipuram thought that Purushottam Deva cheated him. And he wanted to marry his daughter, but he was only a sweeper in Jagannath Puri. And the minister was astonished. He went and told the king of Kanchi, please don't marry your daughter. This fellow is a sweeper. The king sent a message to the king of Orissa saying marriage called off. In fact, he called the king of Orissa for a swayamvar for his daughter. So he called everyone else for the swayamvar of his daughter, but did not invite King Purushottam Dev. And King Purushottam Dev was very highly offended. And he went to a fight against the king of Kanchi. So King Purushottam Dev made a condition before the fight. If the king of Kanchi wins, then Lord Jagannath from Puri will come to Kanchi and stand behind Lord Ganesh. And if King Purushottam wins, then Ganesh will come and stand behind Lord Jagannath in Puri. The fight started, and as the fight was going on, Purushottam Dev's tent caught fire, and all his soldiers died, and he had to rush back to Puri. Now, Purushottam Deva was only in one anxiety, that Jagannath had to go and stand behind Lord Ganesh. That night, the king went to sleep. Lord Jagannath came in the dream of this king and told him, go and attack the king of Kanchi. I will personally help you. The next day, again the king got ready, took his warriors, went to battle. At the same time, two soldiers, one on a black horse and one on a white horse, were seen rushing towards Kanchi. On the way to Kanchi, they stopped at a lake, these two horsemen. And there was a lady selling buttermilk. This lady's name was Manika. The soldiers told her, we are thirsty, give us buttermilk. So they drank buttermilk given by this lady. And the soldiers got on their horse, they were going. The lady said, hey, where is the money for the buttermilk I gave you? The two soldiers said, the payment will be given by our king, he's coming behind, and they went ahead. And sometime later, and they gave her one ring, a ring as a token. He said, keep this ring, give the ring to the king and he will give you money. And when the king reached over there, he saw this lady there. And the lady said, give me money for the buttermilk your two soldiers drank, And she gave the ring back to the king. And when Purushottam Deva saw the ring, he was amazed. This ring was a very, very special ring. And Purushottam Deva anyway paid the money to Manika, that lady. And when he saw the ring, he knew this is Jagannath's ring. The Lord himself came with his brother Balaramji, and they had gone on a fight against the king of Kanchi. And by the time, in fact, that particular place where the king met Manika, he was so amazed. The king donated 5 villages to this lady, who was so fortunate that she actually saw Jagannath and Baldev. And those 5 villages, even today, there's a particular place in Odisha known as Manika Patnam. There is a place where Jagannath met that lady, Manika. And the king gave 5 villages in that surrounding to this lady. So finally, when the king Purushottam reached the battlefield, he saw the entire battle was already over. And the king of Kanchi was defeated. And Purushottam Dev went and took Padmavati, the daughter of the king of Kanchi, and he made an announcement in front of everyone that this lady, daughter of the king of Kanchi, will marry a sweeper only. She was brought to Puri, and in Puri they made the minister and this Padmavati stay in a house for 1 year. And in the next year, when Jagannath Rath Yatra happened, the king called this Padmavati to see the sweeper whom she's going to marry. And the same king was the sweeper the next year, Jagannath's Rath Yatra. And that is when they understood that is the custom of the temple, that every year the king sweeps the floor, basically. And this king Purushottam Dev, his son became Maharaj Pratap Rudra, who was born to Padmavati and Purushottam Dev. Pratap Rudra was one of the greatest devotees of Lord Chaitanya. And imagine, this king, here is a king who is not keeping his position as a king, but he's setting an example that when one comes in front of the Lord, one is a menial servant. The principle here is that, there was no need to broom the streets. The streets are already clean in the temple area. But when you come to the temple, no matter who you are in the material world, don't get your visiting cards. Don't get your ego. There's a very beautiful quote that was put outside one temple. It said, leave your slippers here and also your ego. Many times we leave our slippers outside, but we carry our ego inside. And the ego stinks more than our slippers, right? So when we go in front of so why is King Purushottam Dev doing this? He doesn't need to do sweeping himself. He can hire 100 sweepers. But he is himself doing it to set an example for the world that no matter who you are, in front of Jagannath, you are nothing but a menial servant. In the olden traditional days, the doors of the temple would be small. And they would be so small that everybody would have to bend down and enter. Why? Just so that you get the whole mood of bending down to enter the temple, basically. So when we go to the temple, we always touch the doorstep of the temple. Why? Because so many devotees are passing by, we just take the dust of their feet and put it on their head. So we find all these exalted devotees, Ambrish Maharaj, Yudhishthir Maharaj, all of them, none of them are sannyasis or brahmacharis. They had family responsibilities. But while taking care of their family responsibilities, they were practicing their spiritual lives. They were setting perfect inspirational examples for the world. So it's not only King Janak who set an example. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna gives the example of King Janak, setting an example. But when he is talking about King Janak, he is talking about all the Raja Rishis. What is a Raja Rishi? Raja Rishi means they are Raja outside, but Rishi inside. Outside, they are kings, but inside, they are saints. And that is what is needed today. We don't need leaders who are externally something else, internally something else. Unfortunately, our leaders today, they externally act like saints, but internally they are rogues, basically. What we need is Raja Rishis who are externally kings, but internally the saints. Very detached, basically. So, and then Krishna gives example of Janak Maharaj, and then amazingly, he gives his own example. He gives his own example. He says, this is verse number 22, where Krishna is talking about himself. He says, Name partasti kartavyam, trishu lokeshu kinchana, navaptvam avaptvam, varta eva cha karmani. He says, O son of Pritha, there is no work prescribed for me within all the three planetary systems. Nor am I in want of anything, nor have I a need to obtain anything. And yet I'm engaged in prescribed duties. Krishna talking about himself. He's saying, I don't need anything. Why? So why do you work? You work because you need something, right? That's why you work. I mean, I always ask people this question. If you had unlimited money, would you go for a job? Not 99. 100% people say no. As simple as that. If you have everything, why will you work? Here, look at Krishna's statement. He's saying, I don't need anything. There's no work prescribed for me. I'm not in want of anything. I have no need to obtain anything. But I still work. Why I work? To set an example for the world. And therefore, when Krishna was a grahastha, he would not wake up at 9 o'clock in the morning after a late night party. Every single day, he would wake up at Brahma Muhurta. Brahma Muhurta is typically 1.5 hours before sunrise. Roughly around 4:30. That's the Brahma Muhurta time, 1.5 hours before sunrise is Brahma Muhurta beginning. So every single day, Krishna would wake up at Brahma Muhurta and meditate on himself. Now, whom will Krishna meditate on? Krishna can't meditate on somebody else, right? He meditates on himself only. Now, it doesn't mean that we get up and meditate on ourselves. We meditate on Krishna, basically. So, the example that Krishna is setting is to tell us, this is what is prescribed duty. And Krishna is such a powerful personality, he is teaching by his own example. In the Valmiki Ramayana also, we hear this beautiful verse chanted by Vishwamitra Muni. Kaushalya Supraja Rama Purva Sandhya Pravartate Uttishta Narashardola Kartavyam Deva Manikam. Vishwamitra Muni is telling Rama and Lakshman was sleeping. They are teenagers at that point in time. They not even 13, they were 12 years old. And they were sleeping. And Vishwamitra quotes this verse, Kaushalya Supraja Rama Purva Sandhya Pravartate. He's saying Uttishta Narashardola. He's telling it's the sun is rising. Purva Sandhya Pravartate. So Uttishta. And he's saying Narashardula. Narashardula means you are a tiger among men. That means you are expected to set a standard by waking up in the morning and doing what? Kartavyam Deva Manikam. Duties prescribed by the gods, by higher beings, So that is what is expected of human beings to do. And the Lord himself sets an example by doing it. And Krishna says, Yadi hi evam na varteyam Jatu karmani atendrita, mama vartamanu vartante, manushya partha sarvasha. He says, For if I ever fail to engage in carefully performing duties, O Partha, certainly all men will follow my path. And he says, if I did not perform prescribed duties, all these worlds would be put to ruination. I would be the cause of creating unwanted population. I would therefore destroy the peace of all living entities. So essentially, when Krishna, imagine the responsibility of the higher beings. Imagine if one day the sun says, I'm bored today, I don't want to wake up. So yeah, enough I have done for the world. Today I want to take a break. Imagine the moon saying that I don't want to rise like this in air. I want to change. I'm going on a holiday, So imagine if nature stops doing its duties. If any aspect of nature stops doing its duty, there will be destruction. Krishna is saying that. If I stop doing my duties, the world will be destroyed. So Krishna is setting an example by his own standards, by following it himself. So these great souls don't have to act, but they still act for setting a standard in today's world. And then Krishna says, this is verse 25. He says, Shakta karmani avidvamso yatha purvanti bharata purya vidvams tata shaktas chikir sur loka sangraham. As the ignorant perform their duties with attachment to results, the learned similarly act, but without attachment, for the sake of leading people on the right path. There are so many examples of people who are modern day sages. What you see on the screen, this is Mr. Alfred Ford. Alfred Ford is the great grandson of Henry Ford, and he became a disciple of Srila Prabhupada when he was very young. When Alfred was about 21 years old, he went to meet Srila Prabhupada. As soon as somebody introduced Prabhupada to Alfred Ford, they told him he's a great grandson of Henry Ford, the founder of the Ford Motors. The first question Prabhupada asked him is amazing. I mean, imagine you're meeting somebody who's such a historical personality. What will you ask them? Probably you'll say, how are you? And this and that, something about the grandfather. First question Prabhupada asked is, so where is your grandfather now? That question zapped him. He never ever thought in that direction. Everybody is glorifying great grandson of Henry Ford. Prabhupada is asking, where is he now? And suddenly Alfred realized he's not there. He may be such a great person, but he's no more. Prabhupada wanted to emphasize that everybody has to die. Prabhupada started preaching to him immediately. He said, I asked him, where is he? And then he was bewildered. And then Prabhupada started talking to him about death. He started talking to him about how life is so short and how it is important for you to practice spiritual life seriously. And this boy, he just got so amazed by the philosophy of Prabhupada and the logic. He surrendered to Prabhupada that day, that meeting itself. And eventually became a disciple of Srila Prabhupada. His name is Ambarish Prabhu now. He's an initiated disciple of Srila Prabhupada. And Ambarish was so inspired by Prabhupada's teachings, he wanted to join the Brahmacharya ashram at that point in time. He wanted to give up his fabulous amount of wealth and become a monk in the temple. Imagine how inspired he was. Prabhupada told him no. He told him, you don't need to stay in the temple. You should work outside and serve Krishna to please him. He said, you do that. So Prabhupada was, so Ambarish was so inspired by Prabhupada, he decided to do exactly what Prabhupada said. Prabhupada, at one point, he was in Detroit, and he wanted to get a temple in Detroit for ISKCON serving Bhagwan Krishna. And at that point in time in Detroit, the Ford Motors, I mean, even if you go now to Detroit, Ford is like one of the very, very high-level organizations in Detroit even today, At that point, there were two people who were rivals. The owner of the Ford company, and the second was a union leader in the Ford company. And amazingly, Alfred Ford was the owner of the Ford company, right? There was another lady whose name was I don't know her legal name. But anyway, there was another lady who was a daughter of the union leader. They were both opposing parties. Interestingly, both became disciples of Prabhupada. And that lady, her name was Leka Shravanti Devi, became Prabhupada's disciple. And the fathers were rivals, but the children became god brothers, god sisters. And Prabhupada, he saw one mansion in Detroit. It is known as Fisher Mansion. A few years back, I went there. Even today, it is a state-of-art mansion. One of the biggest properties in the entire Detroit. And at that point in time, it was really fresh and new. And Prabhupada, when he saw it, he was amazed by that Fisher Mansion. He said, this should be definitely our ISKCON's temple and temple of Radha and Krishna. And he asked Amrish Prabhu, can you buy it for ISKCON? They all went and saw. I mean, they were, imagine at that point in 60s and 70s, the entire property was fitted with gold furnishings. There was a lake behind that Fisher Mansion. It's called the Fisher Lake. So that whole property, along with the lake, Prabhupada wanted to buy it for ISKCON. And he just told, Amrish Prabhu about the idea of getting it. And ISKCON had no money at that point in time. This was in the 60s and 70s, absolutely nothing at all. Prabhupada went and spoke to the agent and the owner of that property, and that person at that point was quoting $300,000. This is like in the 60s and 70s, $300,000. And Prabhupada said, see, we're beggars, we don't have any money, can you give it to us for free? That owner collapsed, literally. Imagine somebody is asking for free, $300,000. For Prabhupada, life was very simple. Everything belonged to Krishna, and he has nothing in his hand anyways. So he could ask anything to anyone. And eventually, Prabhupada realized that, this fellow is not going to give it for free anyways. He told his disciple Amrish Prabhu, can you get it for us? So Amrish Prabhu eventually bargained with that person, and he and the Lake Shravanti, that they are enemies basically, their fathers, they both together bought the Fisher Mansion for Prabhupada. Now imagine, even today, Amrish Prabhu, the amount he does, I don't know how many of you all know, in Mayapur, we are building an international headquarters of ISKCON. This is going to be the biggest temple in the entire planet Earth. It's a $500 million project, massive construction. And for that entire project, Amrish Prabhu, Alfred Ford is donating 300 crore rupees for that project. Now, this for all those people who think that ISKCON is sending Indian money to foreign countries, here is an example of foreign money coming to India. For those who have these illusory ideas that Indian money is going outside, here is 300 crores coming inside, basically. So, Amrish Prabhu, here he is an example of someone who is a modern day sage. Extremely successful businessman, but using every bit of what he has for serving a mission that is so noble, and for serving a teacher who is so exalted, right? And I can use so many examples like this, the story of George Harrison. I don't know how many of you all know George Harrison. George Harrison was the lead singer of the famous group Beatles. And he was preached to by Shyam Sundar Prabhu, one of Prabhupada's disciples, in 1967. They didn't know how to preach. They were young boys and girls at that point in time. And they just went on the order of Srila Prabhupada to stay in London. These are American boys and girls. Shyam Sundar Prabhu and his wife Malati, they were married. And Prabhupada told them, go and preach in London. They just landed in London without any money. And they were staying in cardboard boxes for months together. Absolutely no wealth, no money, nothing they had. Only faith in Prabhupada's words and Krishna. And somehow they had a desire that we should preach to George Harrison. And they would do kirtan on the streets and somehow trying to meet George Harrison. They never were able to manage to meet him. One day, Shyam Sundar Prabhu went and stood outside Apple Studio. And he thought, if I bump into one of the Beatles, I can ask them about George Harrison. And fortunately for him, George Harrison walked in that day. And when he saw Shyam Sundar Prabhu, with tilak and dhoti kurta, he told him, "Where have you been? I've been searching for y'all." Imagine George Harrison saying that. I mean, just to give you some idea of what George Harrison is, what kind of madness they had that time. On his 21st birthday, George Harrison got 7 truckloads of letters wishing him happy birthday. 7 truckloads. When they had to, the Beatles, the craze was so much at that point in time. When they had to move from one building to another, if they have to get into their cars, they would be taken by the firefighters from the terrace of one building to another. 3-4 buildings they would cross from the terrace, and they would come down from some building and enter into their cars. That was the kind of madness that George Harrison had, and that is the kind of fan following George Harrison had at that point. And here is George Harrison telling these people, Shyam Sundar Prabhu, "Where have you been? I've been searching for y'all." And Shyam Sundar was amazed. How did even George Harrison come to know about them? And then eventually they, got George Harrison to meet Srila Prabhupada. And George Harrison was so inspired by Prabhupada. He began to chant 16 rounds of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. At some point, George Harrison came to Prabhupada and he said, "I want to become a monk. I want to become a brahmachari in the temple." Prabhupada said, "No, you don't need to become." He said, "You use your talent and preach Krishna consciousness to the world." And then George Harrison began to sing songs in praise of Lord Krishna. All of you all tonight, please hear this song known as "My Sweet Lord" by George Harrison. And you will be amazed by the kind of devotion this man had. Imagine the kind of madness that people had about him. And with so much madness, he had such devotion in his heart towards Krishna. And, George Harrison wanted initiation from Prabhupada. He said, "Can I become your disciple?" If there was any other guru in the world, and George Harrison is saying, "I want to be your disciple," who would say no? Tell me. But you know what Prabhupada told him? Prabhupada told him, "You don't need to get initiated. You're already initiated. Your name is Hari's son." Harrison, right? He said, "You are Hari's son already. You don't need to get initiated. You're already initiated," he told him. And Prabhupada, somebody asked Prabhupada, "Are you George Harrison's guru?" Or something. He asked what? Allen Ginsberg. Prabhupada said, "I'm nobody's guru. I'm everyone's servant." What an amazing person, isn't it? So George Harrison, he was so inspired by Prabhupada that he gave his personal manor in London. If you go today also to Watford in London, Bhaktivedanta Manor was George Harrison's personal property. He donated it to ISKCON. Even today is one of the monumental properties of ISKCON. And he was inspired by Prabhupada and gave it to Prabhupada. And even today, 70,000 people go there for Janmashtami celebrations. Prabhupada, when he was leaving his body in 1977, 14 November 1977, George Harrison was in the mind of Prabhupada. Prabhupada pulled out his ring from his finger. This was the last day of Prabhupada's life. Prabhupada removed a ring from his finger and he told his disciples, "Give it to George." This is an example of someone who is a bhakti yogi trying to set an example for the world to please Krishna. George Harrison lived his entire life remembering Krishna. Even on the last day of his life, the only person who was next to him was that same disciple of Prabhupada, Shyam Sundar Prabhu. And George Harrison, even on the last day of his life, chanted 16 rounds of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra and then he left his body. So you can imagine people who are such exalted personalities. These are modern day sages, isn't it? They're acting in this world, but they are actually acting on a different platform. Their mind is at a different level. So many examples like this of modern day sages. Here is another example of one of the modern day sages. I sometimes want to take many of you all to meet this personality. Is Rishikesh Mafatlal. He is the owner of the Mafatlal Industries. Arvind Mafatlal, I'm sure all of you all, if you're anyway connected to India, you would have heard of Arvind Mafatlal Industries. Krishnachandra Prabhu is again one of the very, very exalted personalities in our movement, disciple of His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj. But what humility! It's just unbelievable kind of humility they have. Fabulous amount of wealth. But the simplicity and the humility with which they live their lives is just fascinating. So these are all people who are externally seem to be very successful, but internally they're sages. So Atmarati is someone who acts in this world. But why does he act? He acts to set a good example. Krishna Chandra Prabhu, at some point, he came to Radhanath Maharaj and he told him, I want to give up all my wealth and stay in the temple. And Maharaj told him, no, you should stay in your palace. And they have a palace. It's huge, huge palace on Altamont Road. And he said, Maharaj said, you stay in your palace and show people what it means to be a Krishna devotee while staying in such opulence. And that's exactly what he's doing all his life. So if you actually go to his house is a temple. And he does so much service to society at all levels, basically. So for us, as we are studying the Bhagavad Gita is not a book that is about theory. It's a book of very powerful practical application of the spiritual lives, spiritual truths that are being spoken by Krishna for today's people. So all of us, you don't have to think Jagat Maharaj can do it, Krishna can do it. No, you and me can do it also. We have so many examples of people who are a part of this world, who seem to be doing duties of this world, but yet their consciousness is something much higher. And that, I think, is one of the greatest examples. And that is one of the greatest needs in today's society. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Sorry for going a little over time. Any questions, comments, discussions, please? Okay, no questions. Surprising. Great.
Hare
So,
Krishna.
yes, Kwar.
Yes, just a question. Like I was really attracted for that thought when you specified that within the whole chapter, Krishna specified Janak Maharaj to be as an example when it comes to leading a life, but no one else, not even like Lord Ram or Dashrath. So if you could help us with something more, because Lord Ram is also known as Maryada Purushottam. So everyone who followed it. So I mean, like, can you
Very
help me
simple
with?
reason. First of all, Krishna now going to talk about himself. Ram is Krishna
Okay,
only, na?
correct.
You prefer to give his father-in-law's example better.
Okay.
And on a more internal level, it pleases Sita also.
That's amazing.
एक तीर में दो निशान.
This was nice thing. And amazing. And your class, like as usual, was filled with wonderful insights. Really, liked it a lot with the various examples that you went through. Thank you so much for going in. Yeah.
Prabhuji, Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Prabhuji, I wanted to ask you a question. Now that Pitru Paksha is coming, it's about to start. So people say that Pitru Paksha, you're not supposed to start anything auspicious or anything new. How is it true, and how far is it true if it is?
See, these rules are definitely meant for human beings to follow, human society to follow.
Okay.
Only if you are at the level of Atmarati, you don't have to follow any of these rules. The question that you would ask yourself is, am I at that level? If I'm not at that level, then I better follow all the rules that are prescribed, basically. But while following those rules, understand the mood and the consciousness with which you're following the rules. Don't just do it mechanically for the sake of doing it. Okay?
Even for Amavasya also, we say that Amavasya, you are not supposed to start anything new.
Yeah. See, what happens is these prescriptions have a scientific basis to them.
Okay.
And there is a very precise astrological reasoning behind any of these prescriptions that traditionally are shared with us.
Okay.
But from a spiritual point of view, there is something more powerful than any of the astrological predictions.
Okay.
So if you have access to that power, then you don't have to follow all these rules.
Okay.
But if you don't have access to that power, and if you're not at that level, then it's better to follow all these rules.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. Hare Krishna. Okay, thank you very much. Very happy being with y'all. And just one announcement that we are starting a course for kids on the Ramayana, Unsung Heroes from Ramayana, on 9th of September for 4 days. So any of you all have children or would like to recommend some of your kids to some friends and family to join in, please do get in touch with us and we'll be happy to register the kids and the kids can take advantage of the Ramayana stories. Okay, thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.